Welcome back, everybody, to our studies in company law. This is topic number 2 in our overall series of lessons on the subject of the company and the law that regulates them. This lesson specifically is going to talk about creating a company, and this represents the first lesson in our second topic on the issue of incorporation. Now, we're going to spend a great amount of time examining the nature of incorporation in this next few set of lessons. The principles of incorporation, should I say specifically, as well as the evolution of these principles in history as well as in case law. Now, we're going to keep in mind a number of issues when we think about the question of incorporation. And really, the question of incorporation is one of the main things that delineates the idea of the company from other kinds of business structures. So you can have partnerships, you can have sole traders, but what the company is something that is separate to the people that run it. And so as a result of which, we have to keep in mind a number of basic principles. We have to keep in mind the principle of incorporation, the principle of corporate personality, and the idea of the corporate veil, and the circumstances in which the corporate veil may be breached or pierced or lifted. These are all things that we're going to be exploring in this next topic. So, like I've just said, and like I have noted in previous videos, one of the things that distinguishes a company from other kinds of business structure or other kinds of business entity is the fact that a company will go through this process. This is a process known as the process of incorporation. Simply put, the process of incorporation is where a company is created with separate legal personality. The process of incorporation today, if you were for somebody who wishes to create a company right now, this process is usually done through online registration at Companies House. It takes normally about half an hour to 45 minutes. It costs around £40, 40 quid from where I can remember. And it's generally not that difficult to do. There's generally lots of templates, things that you can use. So like, for example, template constitution, template share structure, all this kind of stuff. But there are other methods by which a company may be created. This is the sort of usual method by which a company is created today. And by a company that's being created by registration at Companies House, I'm talking specifically about private corporations, limited liability corporations for the most part. Now, there are certain circumstances in which companies can be created through other means, however. And I'm just going to go through these other means relatively quickly because they're often very rare or they're often less common today, whereas they used to be a lot more common in the past. So, for example, an incredibly rare process in which a company may be created is through the idea of parliamentary incorporation, the idea that Parliament can authorise the creation of a company through the passage of legislation. This is as simple as that, really. A company can be created by way of the terms and the text of a piece of legislation, and this is one method by which a company can be incorporated. Again, as I've mentioned on the screen here, though, it should just be noted very, very quickly that this is an incredibly rare process these days. Often it is other processes by which a company is created, not through the passage of legislation. Another rare method by which a company is created, but one that wasn't as rare in the past, is the incorporation by royal charter. This is a process that was historically used when we look at ourselves and we look back at our imperial incorporations when we used to be an empire. I've written there in brackets, unfortunately, because often the British Empire is a part of our history that we probably don't want to look at too much. Essentially, old imperial corporations would be established and used for trading and for administration of colonies. So, for example, the British East India Company or the Dutch East India Company, if we're thinking about Dutch empires in the past, These were the originators of the modern understanding of the company, and they were utilized mainly for the purposes of imperialism and for the purposes of establishing trade across seas. Now, they were also some of the most powerful companies that have ever existed, having their own armies, having their own military structures, having their own societal structures, being able to govern essentially entire swaths of territory, such as the entire subcontinent of India, for example, prior to the Indian Mutiny of 1858. More modern examples of these sort of royal charter companies include the creation of the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation. That is a company that was created by way of royal charter. I say modern examples, that's not that modern really. It was created quite a long time ago, but still nevertheless is one of the more up-to-date 20th century examples of the creation of some kind of institution, some kind of corporation through the royal charter. The authority for royal charter corporations comes under the fact that the monarchy can act under the auspices of the royal prerogative. If you want to know more about the royal prerogative, go and have a look at our lessons on public law or constitutional and administrative law. Those are really where we see where I spend a lot more time talking about the royal prerogative in more detail. Of course, if you are somebody who is studying law in the United Kingdom, in England and Wales, and you're studying company law as a module, I assume that you will have also already studied public law in the past, so would probably have a good understanding of this particular topic. Finally then, let's talk about the most common way in which a company is created today. This is through the process of registration. Registration of a company is done at Companies House, and historically, registration of a company will happen if you basically have to create or sign off certain documents and then send them to Companies House, the actual place itself. Today, however, most companies are registered through an online registration process. Section 9 of the 2006 Companies Act ensures that in order for a company to be registered, a number of documents are required for registration. These include a memorandum of association, an application for registration, as well as a statement of compliance. There is also a number of other pieces of information that are required, including the name of a company or the proposed name. Of course, Companies House will check that to make sure that there are no other companies with that name, and to make sure that that name fits with their regulations and guidelines. Secondly, there has to be a registered office for that company. This may be the company's director's house, given that a lot of companies are particularly small. Micro corporations, corporations in which it is just you, a company director, and your business, or maybe you as a company director with maybe one or two employees that may not have a headquarters, a registered office, or anything like that, that may therefore mean that your company's registered office is the house that you live in, which is absolutely fine. And essentially what the registered office for the company utilizes is for basically the ability for the company to actually receive post and to receive letters from Companies House and from HMRC and from other such places. You have to also specify that if your company is going to be limited or unlimited. For the most part, your company will be limited, given that companies often incur debts, and debts want to be limited to the corporation itself and not to the people who run and operate it. You'll also have to apply with some kind of share capital information. Often the Companies House online registration for small companies will specify that you essentially, if you're a single director, you will have one share worth £1. That's the sort of basic template for a share capital requirements for this corporation. And then finally, you need to think about the name and addresses of the various different company directors.